Welcome back to my channel. My name is Holly and today I have a video showing you what I've been sewing in March. So in today's video I will be talking all about this dress here, it's maxi dress. I will be talking about the fabric, how I drafted this because I self-drafted the pattern myself. I'll be showing you some of the pattern pieces, how I made it and what it looks like on me and some kind of construction details as well. Quickly before we get into this dress, I'll talk about the dress that I'm wearing. I've already done a video on this dress of how I self-drafted it, sewn it and what the fabric is, so I'll leave that link below or maybe in a card above at some point. The fabrics that I will be featuring and talking about today have been gifted to me from Fabricland. It is to do my Instagram profile, nothing to do with YouTube, but I thought as I've sewn it this month, it would be lovely to make a video and share it with you. Okay, first up is, let's talk about the fabric that I used. I had a video, my previous video I think it was, saying about a fabric haul and my sewing plans, so you can see on there my design sketch and the plan that I had for this dress, so you can check that out in another video. But let's talk about the fabric. So this fabric is a 100% visco fabric and it's in this lovely sort of plum pink, I think they describe it on the website, with a white paisley kind of print detail on it. So I've just got a little scrap, let me get, here we go. So you might see a little bit more up close. It's very lightweight. It's got a lovely lot of movement and very breathable because it is 100% visco. It is very light to work with, so when you're cutting and sewing you need to kind of like just prep the fabric, cut with the sandwiching technique so you get a really straight thin line because sometimes it can move about a little bit. For this maxi dress I think I got 4.5 meters and this fabric is £4.49 a metre, so nice and affordable, like it's really nice fabric for that price point. Yes, I got 4.5 meters and I pretty much used every scrap of it. I was so close to getting like a zero waste garment out of it. Yeah, I think I got a few strips, a few cut it away bits, so I was so close. I could do a video about that, about how this is almost how to make it almost zero waste garment, because that's quite interesting. So let's talk about how this dress is made up and its pattern pieces. Over my Instagram I put up a little poll, my stories, if when I share my makes, my self-drafted makes, if to include the shapes of the pattern pieces, and so many people, I can't remember how many it was, but I think it was 98% said yes. So I'm definitely going to do that. I'll tell you about it now, and I've actually just drawn out a little sketch on a piece of paper, so if I hold that up you can maybe pause it and have a look at the pattern pieces and kind of get your bearings of what comes to what. But anyway, let's start here. So this is the front of the maxi dress. It goes down to the floor on me. For reference, I'm 5'5" and about a size 6 to 8. Yeah, so it goes to the floor. So the front piece is just one section of fabric. So from the neckline all the way down to the hem to the side seams is one section of fabric. And then if we turn to the back, I'll come to this tie detail in a minute, and this tie detail. So the back section mirrors the front section, very similar armhole detail, but it's been cut for the back and for the front. It's not the same pattern piece. And for the back I've had, actually let's take away this tie so I can show you a bit easier. Right, so down the back actually has a, I can't actually find it, that's how, there it is, it's so camouflaged. I have a seam down the centre back. Now I've got a seam down the centre back, it's because of this tie detail up here. This is how you get in and out of the dress. So you can open this, pull this across. So to be able to have this little opening up here within the casing, I'll talk about the casing as well in a little bit. To be able to get this nice and neat, I had to run it off a seam. So if I didn't have this, I probably could have got away with one piece on the back, but because I've got this detail here, I had to run a seam down the centre back. So I've got a seam down the centre back. I've also thread. I go around these garments, like cutting every bit of thread I can see, get it on here to talk about it, and I can see threads coming out everywhere. So ignore the threads, they will be cut off soon. And then I've got a seam down each side seam. So it's got 3 seams to make up the whole garment. And if you can see here, it's a lot of fabric. That's how big it is. Okay, so here's the piece of paper that I was saying. Hopefully you can see that. So we have here is the front pattern piece shape, the 2 back pieces pattern shape, the tie for the waist, they were made out of 4 tie sections, and this is, these 2 at the bottom is the necktie pattern pieces, and I had 2 of this side and 2 of this one as well. On here also I haven't included is the facing, so I'll come to that in a minute, but that's sort of an idea of the shapes of the pattern pieces. So let's talk about next this sort of neck detail around here and why I did it like this. So for this dress I didn't want to have a zipper or anything in it, so like I said earlier, it's tied together at the centre back through that little hole of the casing. So I wanted this to have a really nice drapey movement feel, so I can wear it like this without the belt, or I can wear it with the belt and have a lot more shape detail in it. Now for this up here, this is made up of just a round casing, so I have sewn it up and rolled it back on itself, and then stitched it here. There's a very thin line of stitching, so then I've got like a sort of a circle casing. So I did that for the front and same for the back, but because I have this centre back seam and this tiny little here which I needed the opening for, I sort of just hemmed the inside. The casing is from here to here, 2 separate casings with a hole on the end which will allow this tie detail to come through and out. Now this is quite, I wanted this also because then I can pull it as tight or as loose as I wanted to get the dress on and off over my head. So that is this detail, how I made this. So it's literally just a long casing and it's been pushed together with this tie detail. Now for the tie detail, I sort of experimented a little bit with this and sort of not. If I had just made a complete straight section of fabric to go around here, it wouldn't sit nicely with this curve here. So to be able to get this nice curved here, I pattern drafted a section of curved straightness. So this bit's more straight and then it curves here. This tie detail is one long strip that starts at this end, then runs all the way around the front and back out the back. For to get more out of the fabric and to make it easier to cut, this tie detail does have a seam here, in here at the centre front, but because it's in the casing, you can't see it. So that is how that is made. You could, for ease, have one long strip and not make it curved, but your neckline it won't sit curved like this, and this will it'll just not sit flat. When I'm wearing it, I wanted it to sit completely flat over the shoulder. So that's why I did that. And then you can just tie this however you want, in a bow or knot, and that's lovely and secured. So that is the tie detail. It might make it easier, I've got the two pattern pieces here, so what I just explained I'll show you in the pattern. I'll have to put one of these down. So this is the shape of the necktie. So let me show you. So this is the centre front, like I said, has a seam. So this sits here, and as you can see it'll sit round here nice and flat, round here, and then I extended this bit into this shape, extended long to the tie detail. So that is the pattern piece for the tie. See that curved shape. And for the front, this is the pattern piece. So this is, up here is the casing. So this is my neckline, which I fold down and then fold this bit under, which makes the casing. So you see through the paper, that's what it looks like inside, so some rolled detail. And then this is the arm shape detail running down to the side seams. Now, how I cut this one bit of fabric, because I wanted to use all the fabric, I didn't want to make much like wastage. I almost wanted to make the zero waste dress, and I almost got there. Instead of cutting into the strip of fabric, I literally laid out the length of fabric like this onto the floor completely flat, and then on this side of the fabric I laid my pattern piece just onto the side seam, which is the selvage of the big piece of fabric on the floor. Laid that up there, attached this, lined it up to the top of the cut of fabric, making sure that is straight, and then I literally just cut the armhole out of this side. Then I flipped over the pattern to do the left hand armhole on the other side of the other corner of the big piece of fabric. I did the same, lined it up, lined the edge up with the selvage of that side of the fabric, lined it up with the top to make sure it's completely in line with the right armhole, and cut out the left armhole. So out of that whole stretch of fabric, I only cut out this corner of fabric, which worked really well. Over on my Instagram, I put up a huge time-lapse video of me cutting it out, so you can either look at that or I might insert it now so you can have a quick idea of what I just explained. Once I had that little armhole section taken off the fabric, I then draped it and pinned it onto the stand to get an idea of how long I wanted it, and to make sure that that volume of fabric, the whole width of that fabric, would be okay and not too overwhelming. Yes, I just literally pinned it on here, and then I cut the bottom of the fabric at where I wanted it to be. And then I did the same for the back, exactly the same thing, but for the back section, because it's made out of 2 sections of exactly the same amount of fabric, when I laid out the long stretch of fabric, I just cut down the middle of it, marked it and cut it, and then did exactly the same cut out arm detail of the corner of the fabric, and that worked really well. And then I put that on the stand as well, and then cut the length. Now I don't think you'll be able to see, for the hem, I just did a simple 1 centimetre rolled hem, which works really well on visco because it can press really easily and fold really easy, and it kind of does what you said it to do, which is good. And then for the side seams, so I have a side seam going down here. Because it's a long maxi dress, quite a lot of fabric, I really wanted some movement in the skirt and potentially see my legs when I'm walking. So I decided, put it here, to put a side seam slit up each side to about my thigh detail, so then when I move, when I walk, I've got some air in there and you can see my legs, and I think this looks really lovely. And also, a full length maxi dress can be a little bit hard to walk in sometimes, so that's the side detail. So the last thing I want to speak about on the construction of this dress is how I constructed these armholes, because it did take me a little bit of a while to figure out the best way to do it for this fabric. Because this curved line here for the armhole is cut on the bias, because the grain of fabric is running straight, so across here is the bias of the fabric. So when you cut on the bias like this, sit straight, it can easily stretch. So you have to be careful with hemming and sewing that you don't stretch the fabric. If I'd stretched it, it would be kind of pinging out a little bit like that. It won't sit nice and flat to the body, and it can have a little bit of a rippling effect. So how I got around this was, if I'd hemmed it, I could have easily just done a very small hem here, but I had a huge chance of it could stretch and it could ripple. So I didn't really want to take that chance because I'd already made it, and I just didn't want that to potentially happen right at the end of making the garment. So instead I made a facing. A facing is a section of fabric that sits inside the garment and kind of holds any neckline, armholes flat and in place. So for this I have 4 facings, 1 on each armhole, so 2 in the front and 2 on the back. And the facing area runs from about here all the way around here and goes into the side seam. Because I've got that in the inside, it meant that I can just stitch those 2 sections of fabrics with the right sides together, and then once it's stitched, turn the facing into inside, attach it into the side seam and the casing here so it sits flat inside. I stitched into the seam allowance to ensure it sits even flatter in there. And then pressed nicely to keep it flat. So I'm really happy with those facings in there, and the facings are made out of exactly the same fabric as this. So if you do kind of slightly see it when you're wearing it or moving in it, it just blends in. So I just got the pattern piece for the facing. I thought it'd be a bit easier to explain it. So this is the front pattern piece for the facing. So this pattern piece, which has been cut from the same fabric, sits in the inside along like this. Oh, we line up. There we go, like that. So this piece of facing then is sort of attached in the inside of the casing here, and then on the side seam it sits in there. So that's keeping it flat and not moving. When you're making a facing, this edge here, the one that's going to be attaching to the outside of the garment, needs to be exactly the same angle and shape as the armhole. If it isn't, it won't sit flat. So these need to be exactly the same shape, like that. And then you can make your facing as deep or as whatever shape you want in the inside. Depends on your garment, depends on the fabric, depends what you prefer. But then because this is a raw edge here, I needed to make it so it doesn't stop fraying. So I made my own bias binding out of this fabric with some of my offcuts, which is perfect. And then I just bound this edge of the fabric so it looks nicer, it blends in and it won't fray. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and let me share with you what I've been making in March. I have another making video as well coming up, which I made, maybe it's garment maybe a week ago, so I'll share that with the next video. But yeah, if you liked it, remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I also have a sewing blog which has lots of tips, tutorials and guides on, so I'll leave that link below. And I'm also over on Instagram, so I'll leave that linked as well. But I will see you again soon. Bye!